Hey everyone, welcome to our deep dive into Jefferson Bethke's book, To Hell with the Hustle.
It's a great book.
We're going to be talking about excerpts from it today.
Yeah, really looking at how this whole, hustle culture.
This always on, always grinding.
Yeah, exactly.
How that mentality impacts how we feel, our well-being.
Totally.
And we'll also be looking at some things that Bethke talks about, like practicing Sabbath and embracing obscurity, kind of like countercultural paths to, well, actually flourishing as humans.
It's really interesting some of the connections he makes in the book.
Yeah, like how did he even come up with this stuff?
I know, right? Like he compares the assembly line to today's hustle culture.
Wild.
And get this, he talks about how the noise in some restaurants is similar to torture techniques.
No way. Seriously.
Yeah.
That's intense.
It is, right? But he's making a point.
Yeah, what is it?
We're constantly bombarded with all these subtle and not so subtle ways of being controlled, things that keep us in this frantic, hustling state.
I can see that. It's like we're always on edge, always trying to keep up.
Right. And one of the big things Bethke argues is that humans, we aren't just made, we're formed through all those things we do over and over, our practices and rituals.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's deep. I never thought of it that way.
It's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it?
Totally. It makes you think about all those little habits we have.
Exactly.
He uses this example of how he makes coffee for his wife every night.
Yeah.
Sounds simple, right? But it's a ritual.
It is. And it says something about how we form our character, our relationships.
So true. Like, it's not just the action itself, it's the meaning behind it.
And the consistency of it. Bethke's asking us to look beyond those individual actions and ask,
Like, who am I becoming through all this stuff I'm doing?
Yep. He says all those rituals we do, whether we realize it or not, they're shaping us.
Into the people we'll be.
That's it.
Whoa! That's a lot of responsibility for our daily coffee routine.
Right.
But it's not just what we do. It's also how much information we take in, right?
Totally. Bethke calls it information addiction.
I can relate to that.
And he's got the stats to back it up.
Like what?
He says, we make as much information every 2 days
Wow.
as we did, get this, up to the year 2003.
That's crazy.
Oh.
I can't even wrap my head around that.
It's a mind-boggling amount. And all that information, it overwhelms our brains, leads to anxiety.
Yeah. And probably keeps us from thinking deeply about things.
Absolutely.
It's like we're constantly bombarded with stuff, but we don't have time to process any of it.
It's this constant state of stimulation. And Bethke says it's made even worse by another problem.
What's that?
Noise pollution.
Yeah. Everywhere you go.
All that relentless noise from restaurants to coffee shops to...
Spin classes.
Oh, yeah, those are bad. He mentions a study, a journalist measured noise in everyday places.
Oh, interesting.
And restaurants. They were consistently above safe levels. Sometimes it was as loud as sounds used in...
Don't say it.
Torture techniques.
See, I told you. That is scary.
It is, right?
Like, we've gotten so used to all the noise.
We don't even realize how much it's affecting us.
Right. It's just become normal.
And the crazy thing, some places, they use that noise on purpose. Bethke says they do it to get customers to leave faster.
Oh, wow.
Or to, encourage people to drink more.
No, it's kind of messed up.
It is disturbing when you think about it. This deliberate use of noise to manipulate us.
It's like we're being played, but we don't even realize it.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, how is noise impacting you, your well-being?
That's a good question.
Do you ever go looking for silence? Or are you always surrounded by sound?
I think I need to be more intentional about seeking out silence.
It's something to think about, because Bethke says silence. It's not just the lack of noise.
What is it then?
He sees it as a place for what he calls conversion, a place where we can meet our true selves.
Like a place for self-discovery.
Exactly.
I like that.
And he's not the only one who thinks that way. He quotes Henri Nouwen.
Oh, yeah, I love his writing.
Nouwen said, solitude is not a private therapeutic place. It is the place where the old self dies and the new self is born.
Whoa. Death and rebirth through silence. That's a powerful image.
It is, right.
Makes you think.
And what's interesting is that Bethke, at first, he struggled with silence.
Really? Why?
He was so used to all the noise, all the activity, being alone with his thoughts was unnerving for him. But eventually, he learned to appreciate it.
The transformative power of silence.
Exactly.
And that leads him to another key practice, Sabbath.
Yeah, this ancient practice of setting aside a whole day.
Just for rest and rejuvenation.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I struggle with that one.
It can be tough,
Yeah.
especially with our hustle-hard culture.
It feels almost impossible to take a whole day off.
I get it.
Yeah.
But Bethke draws this really interesting parallel between Sabbath and Christmas.
Oh, wow. I never thought of those two together.
He explains how both of them, they involve this societal expectation to stop working, to focus on rest, celebration, connection.
That's true. Like, even if you don't celebrate Christmas religiously, there's still this cultural understanding that it's a time to slow down.
Right. And Bethke and his family, they're intentional about how they shape their Christmas traditions.
To make sure they're doing things that reflect their values,
Yeah.
not just following the consumerism.
Exactly. They've even got a no-toy policy for their kids.
Wait, what?
No toys at Christmas?
Seriously. No piles of presents under the tree.
Nope. They go for experiences and meaningful gifts instead.
Wow. That's pretty radical. But I kind of love it.
It is, right? It gets to the heart of what Bethke is saying about Sabbath.
Reclaiming our time and attention.
Taking it back from the demands of all this hustle and busyness.
Giving it to things that truly matter.
Exactly.
So how do we do that? How do we create our own Sabbath?
That's the question.
What would it look like to intentionally pause, rest, connect?
It's worth thinking about. It really is.
Yeah. I think I need to start there. Just thinking about it.
That's a great place to start.
Thanks for getting us thinking about this. It's a good reminder that we need to be more intentional about how we live our lives.
Absolutely.
It's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and forget what really matters.
It is.
But I think Bethke is right. There's a better way. A way to flourish, not just survive.
Couldn't agree more.
We'll dive into more of this in our next episode. Stay tuned.
Looking forward to it. You know, Bethke connects Sabbath to how we interact with other people and our sense of belonging.
Okay.
He talks about this whole concept of tribalism.
Interesting. That feels really relevant these days with everyone being so connected online.
It is. But what do you think he means by tribalism?
I guess he's talking about how it's so easy to find your own little groups online.
Exactly. We can curate our own social circles.
And end up in these echo chambers.
Yeah, where you're mostly exposed to people who think just like you do.
Which, on the surface, doesn't sound so bad. I mean, it's natural to want to connect with people who get you.
Totally. Bethke acknowledges that. He gets that we have this deep human need to belong.
Right.
He even uses this example of European settlers who were drawn to Native American life.
Really?
Even though, at the time, it was considered inferior by European standards.
Wow. That's kind of a surprising example. I wouldn't have expected that.
It goes against that assumption that people always gravitate towards what's seen as better or more advanced, right?
Yeah. It really highlights how much we all crave connection and community.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Bethke's point is that even though technology helps us connect, it also makes it easier to avoid those uncomfortable encounters with different viewpoints.
I see what you mean. We can just surround ourselves with people who agree with us all the time.
Yeah, and that can actually backfire. He thinks it can hinder our empathy and critical thinking skills.
That makes sense. If you're never challenged, you never have to grow.
Right. He even calls Facebook the empathy killing machine.
Whoa. That's a strong statement.
Yeah.
But I think I get what he's saying.
It's like social media can make us less sensitive to the struggles of others and more likely to just react emotionally.
Instead of thinking things through.
Yeah. And it's easy to get sucked into that outrage cycle online where everyone's just trying to one-up each other with their anger.
Nuance goes right out the window.
Totally. And it's not just our choices, as individuals. It's also how these platforms are designed.
Oh, yeah. Like with the algorithms and stuff.
Those algorithms prioritize emotional responses. They want to keep us hooked, keep us scrolling.
It's like a recipe for disaster.
Kind of, right?
Yeah.
It's this combination of our human tendencies and the way tech is structured.
Leading to this decrease in empathy online.
Exactly. But Bethke doesn't just leave us there, feeling all doom and gloom.
Oh, good. What does he say?
He actually offers some really practical things we can do.
Like what?
To cultivate empathy, even in all that online toxicity.
I'm all ears.
One of the simplest things, just ask, what do you mean by that?
Interesting.
Before you react to something someone says or posts online.
I never really thought about that.
It's such a small thing, but it can make a big difference.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like taking a step back, assuming good intentions.
Instead of just jumping to conclusions.
Right, and maybe avoiding a whole unnecessary argument.
Exactly. Bethke even talks about a time when he felt misunderstood online. and how important it is to seek clarification before assuming the worst.
That makes sense. It's so easy to misread things online. Tone and context can get lost so easily.
It really can. And moving beyond just online stuff, Bethke also challenges us to think about how we define success and fulfillment.
Okay.
This is where he brings in what might be his most countercultural idea:
Yeah, what is it?
embracing obscurity and finding meaning in the ordinary stuff.
Instead of always chasing recognition and achievement,
Yep.
that definitely goes against everything our culture tells us.
It does, right? What do you think he means by embracing obscurity?
Well, I remember him talking about how he was really successful at a young age,
Yeah, with his writing and videos.
but he also felt this emptiness, this lack of fulfillment.
Even though from the outside it looked like he had it all, he'd achieved what so many people dream of.
But it wasn't enough.
Right. He was chasing external validation, and it left him feeling empty.
Man, that would be tough. To achieve all that success and then realize it's not what you thought it would be.
He even talks about how he's had to grapple with the possibility that his most commercially successful work might be behind him.
Wow. That's got to be a hard thing to face,
Mm,
especially when you're still so young.
it is. But instead of focusing on that outward success, he's choosing to cultivate what he calls inner faithfulness.
I like that. So what does that look like in real life?
He talks about doing your work with excellence, loving your neighbors well, being present in the everyday moments.
It's about finding fulfillment in the ordinary.
Yeah, not constantly striving for something extraordinary.
That's a beautiful idea.
Yeah.
But it also feels like a really big challenge.
It is. It requires us to shift how we think.
And to redefine what success means to us.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that true flourishing might actually be found in those seemingly insignificant everyday moments.
So instead of chasing accolades or trying to be in the spotlight all the time,
Yeah.
Bethke's saying we should look for meaning in those quiet moments. The ones where we're connecting, serving, just being present.
That's it. It's a pretty radical idea, right?
It is. But there's something about it that feels really right.
I think so too.
It's like he's saying we should be those unsung heroes,
Yeah.
finding fulfillment just in the doing, not needing all the recognition.
Yeah, you got it. He talks about figures in the Bible like Moses and Abraham.
Okay.
They lived faithfully but kind of under the radar for decades. Their impact, it wasn't really seen until much later.
It's a good reminder that some of the most important work happens, well, kind of behind the scenes, out of the spotlight.
Exactly. But it does make you think, what does that quiet faithfulness look like for us, in today's world?
Good question.
Bethke talks about shifting our focus. Instead of looking for validation from outside, focus on inner integrity.
Okay.
It's like asking yourself, am I living in a way that matches my values, even if no one notices or gives me a pat on the back?
It's about living authentically, driven by what's important to you, not by what other people think.
Yeah, which honestly kind of goes against everything our culture tells us.
Big time.
It challenges that whole hustle and grind mentality, work yourself to the bone to achieve success.
That's the message everywhere, isn't it?
It is. But Bethke thinks that approach just leads to burnout, anxiety, feeling like you're never good enough.
Yeah, I can see that. So
Yeah.
how do we break free from that? How do we actually embrace a better way of living?
Well, he says it starts with noticing how that hustle culture thinking has already gotten into our heads. We've been trained to think our worth is tied to how much we produce. Like we always have to be striving to prove ourselves.
It's like being busy means you're important. And if you're not constantly doing something, you're a failure.
Exactly. But Bethke's inviting us to look at it differently. Our worth. It comes from being human, not from what we achieve or how busy we are.
Decoupling self-worth from output, that's huge. I mean, that's a really different way of thinking for a lot of us.
It is. It's about embracing this perspective where rest, silence, connection, community, even obscurity, those things are more important than always striving and achieving.
So it's not about being lazy or giving up on your goals.
No, not at all.
It's about taking a step back and asking yourself, what really matters? And how can I build a life that reflects that?
Right. It's about finding a rhythm of life that sustains you, that helps you thrive, not burn out.
That idea of a sustainable rhythm, it really resonates with me. It's like creating a life that feeds your soul instead of draining it.
Bethke emphasizes that it's a journey, not a destination. It's something we keep working on. Coming back to those practices, those rituals that help us become who we want to be.
Being intentional with our time, our energy, everything.
Yeah. Choosing to invest in what lines up with your values, even if it's not glamorous or Instagram-worthy.
Finding meaning in the simple things, in those everyday moments of connection, service, just being present.
Beautifully put.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into To Hell with the Hustle, I want to leave you with this. What if the key to creating truly meaningful work, work that lasts, what if it's not about chasing the extraordinary, but about embracing the quiet faithfulness of everyday living?
What if the biggest impact we make comes not from some grand achievement, but from those small, consistent acts of love and service, those ripples that spread out from a life lived in line with our values?
It's a powerful thought, one that challenges us to redefine success, to embrace our inherent worth, and to find fulfillment in those quiet, often unseen moments that make up our lives. Thanks for joining us. Keep seeking those moments of quiet faithfulness, and let the ripples of your actions create a better world.